So we were all treated to, a surprisingly dramatic finish to the Sunday night football game between the New York Giants and the
Yeah.
Buffalo Bills. Certainly didn't anticipate it being that close. We'll
No.
get to the game for sure much later, but obviously one of the big viral moments that came from this was right at the beginning when they go through the opening lineups that obviously these networks have done for years and years and years. But Justin Pugh getting up there, the offensive lineman. Obviously, everyone, you all know that they introduce themselves, and usually they're college, sometimes they're high school that they're from. But Justin Pugh goes Justin Pugh straight off the couch. You gotta love it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and funny of him to be like, I to be honest, like I forgot he had like semi-retired, like he retired and was out of the league, and so I'm really glad he said it because it was that instant realization, that moment again, like, oh my God, that's right, this dude, he literally is straight off the couch. They literally just called him to see if he could come back. That's how decimated that offensive line has been for the New York Football Giants. And so I thought it was a really good lighthearted moment to start. And I think those Sunday Night Football intros I love that the networks don't get too strict with what you can and can't do. They let guys have fun with it a little bit. And I think it's smart because it creates those viral moments. How many times has that Sunday night intro been shared now on X and Twitter and on all social media, because they allow for these guys to have a little fun and creativity.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, those are good lighthearted moments. And from straight off the couch to straight into your living room with Tyreek Hill doing the celebration. Grabbing the cameraman's camera and doing a backflip with it from the POV there. And of course, the NFL, he gets flagged for it. The NFL is going to issue a fine. And it was the NFL UK account that he took the camera from. They posted it and the NFL made them take it down.
That's so
like,
ridiculous.
We can't have this because we find them. And I mean, it's just people were thrown out the no fun league. And, in many respects, they give people reason to say that.
The NFL, they can't get out of their own way sometimes with stuff like that. They just can't, especially with, the roughing the passer calls we've seen lately, some of these really ticky-tacky stuff. Listen, we're all going to watch football no matter what. But the NFL, I think sometimes it's almost like they need more people that work at the NFL high levels that watch the NFL. I don't know if these guys actually sit down on a Sunday like we do, get your nachos, your beer, and you just watch the games. Because when you watch the product, like there are legitimate criticisms of the product. One of them being, I think, the time zone stuff with the London game. The other thing being like the no fun league stuff like that. And then, some of these ticky-tacky calls. It's like, and they could just free up so much of their own drama they create. I feel like if they had more just access to average guys who watch the games and be like, yeah, stop doing that. That's stupid. Just let that happen. We don't care.
Yeah, I mean, it's the fines, too, that get kind of ridiculous. I remember Jalen Warren earlier this year had an entire game check for his fine because he doesn't make that much per game. He makes about like 55 grand or something. And that's what the
Kittle fine for the Fuck Dallas shirt. It's like, who cares? He's having fun. Let him wear the Fuck Dallas shirt. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and it's you're not getting away from it by censoring your own product in that way. It's out there. It's everywhere. Kids are gonna see the F-bomb every now and then. It's how it works. Like,
let the kids see the F-bomb.
Yeah. Come on, we got to push this on. But yeah, we got an exciting one today, especially because it is the debut of Mark's Super Bowl plane.
It's back, baby.
Which, has this been going since year one? I don't remember. 2020 was our first season. We did it in 2020, but we've got a revamped presentation of this Super Bowl plane for you. So we're excited to show you that and obviously get through this big slog of games. That was a very weird Sunday in the NFL. Said that a couple times this year. This might have been the strangest, but no more undefeated teams in the league. Let's get to our Week 6 recap.
Serving the Quad Cities area since 1973. And with over 50 years of excellence on their track record, you'll see why it's so easy to trust their experts when it comes to all of your home improvement projects. This family-owned business has you covered on all your needs. Protect your home or building from the elements today and get great roof repair services. Need new windows? No problem. Durham Remodeling can upgrade your windows and doors. Whether you want to upgrade the little details in your home or office, or want to tear a room down and start fresh, the expert contractors at Durham Remodeling have your back. Even the smallest changes can completely transform your space. Ready to start entertaining your friends for backyard barbecues? Durham Remodeling will help you plan, design, and build your deck and patio for the perfect outdoor space. Durham Remodeling's work is 100% guaranteed, so you can rest assured that you're getting the best service around. Call 309-786-6715 today for your free estimate for all your roofing, siding, flooring, windows, and painting needs. That's Durham Remodeling, 309-786-6715.
All right, you are watching and listening to the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan, part of the For Frequency's Sake podcast network. Go check out all of these shows over at forfantasysakeqc.com and like and subscribe wherever you may be listening and or watching FB Lounge Pod on social. So, Mark, we're getting into this Week 6 recap here, and can't really have a Week 6 recap without discussing some of the notable injuries. So I think we'll touch on that first before we get into kind of the slate of games. It's some of these big ones, obviously. It's really rough. We'll start with the marquee one, unfortunately. Justin Fields dislocating his thumb, popped it back in the game. On his throwing hand, just a terrible all-around situation. Dr. Jesse Morse of the Fantasy Doctors, who's also been on the show here earlier this year, kind of did a diagnosis of this a little bit from based on the video and said that it's likely surgery is going to happen here. It's just going to be impossible for Justin Fields to grip, according to Dr. Morse and some other fantasy football doctors and specialists out there. And they are saying that while surgery is likely, that's going to result in Justin Fields most probably being out for a month at minimum. So obviously brutal news for the Bears and a situation where they already had a terrible loss to the Vikings. Their situation just gets so much worse now.
Yeah, having to watch Tyson Bagent for the next month plus is going to really kill me.
It's going to be was brutal.
It's going to be one of those it's going to test my moxie. It's going to test my ability as a fan to be a fan. You hate to see it, but Justin, listened, he was not playing great, particularly to start that game. The Bears offense was very lackadaisical. It looked like the extra time off hurt them, didn't help them, which is just, that to me is, again, bad coaching, like 101. Andy Reid is the king off the bye. That's a good coach, like getting your team ready, prepared, energized, and using that extra time in the right way versus teams when they have the extra time to come out lackadaisical. I mean, that's just bad coaching 101. But Justin Fields, I will say, when he comes back and he's healthy, he should have every snap. I think we as Bears fans will learn over the next month plus with Bagent that he's not the guy. I already know he's not the guy. I mean, you watch, even in his preseason stuff and from week one, yeah, maybe he can be a guy who can develop into a Taylor Heineke type, really nice, fun, energetic backup quarterback. He's big, strong, physical. You know what I mean? He's a total moxie guy. So that, I'm sure, will, lead. But Justin Fields needs to play every snap that he's cleared to play for the Bears the remainder of this season. And he has got to do a better job of, when the play is not there, and he was extending, and then trying to throw it last minute to not take the sack. That's what got himself injured. If he would have just thrown the ball out of bounds or taken the sack, Justin Fields would have played the rest of that game and been, healthy from that injury. Who knows, then what happens the next play? It's the butterfly effect, right? But it's a brutal injury, especially because it's the throwing hand. If it's the non-throwing hand, you bandage it up, you go out there and you play. It's your other right. Thumb, you survive.
Easy.
But it's going to be a brutal next month and a half for me and Bears fans, because you're going to see nothing on social media that's not, every time Tyson Bagent plays well, and maybe he does win them a couple games, he shows a little spark, then he'll start is Tyson Bagent the guy? I think obviously we all know he's not, and the Bears are going to end up with top picks you're going to draft a quarterback or keep Justin Fields. Those are your two avenues. Bagent is not going to become Brock Purdy. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, everyone would hope that that's the case. That is unfortunately not how the NFL works. Also at the quarterback position, Jimmy Garoppolo goes down with a back injury. He actually had to go to the hospital to make sure that nothing severe or serious happened. It looked like he was cleared and okay after that, but he is still dealing with this back injury. No timetable for his return. And the Raiders, kind of have rattled off some interesting wins lately.
Yeah.
They're still not a good team by any stretch, but they were finding ways to get their young tight end involved. Michael Mayer finally breaking out a little bit from Notre Dame. So they've kind of inserted themselves as a little bit of a scrappy team here the last couple weeks. But now with Jimmy Garoppolo down, it's going to be interesting to see what happens moving forward, Mark, if Aiden O'Connell's the next step or what they're going to do there with the Raiders. But Jimmy G going down, obviously not good, especially when they were just getting a rhythm going.
I will say this. Obviously, they went straight to Hoyer in this game because of how bad O'Connell was the first time we saw him. So I think they'll lean on Hoyer depending on the timetable for Jimmy G. And the Raiders are scrappy, and a lot of that is Max Crosby. Like Max Crosby alone is like scrap dog 101. Like, I mean, he is the the junkyard dog, and he is phenomenal and playing really good football. And so we'll have to keep an eye on Jimmy G. The timetable is going to tell us everything about what the Raiders should or shouldn't do.
Damian Harris goes down, another scary scene for Buffalo. Man, they've been through a lot when it comes to injuries the last year. But Damian Harris was seemingly immobile on the field for a while. They had to bring an ambulance on the field. Really scary scene. But reports were that he did have movement in his arms and legs, so that's a good sign. But no kind of indication as to what will be moving further. Obviously, for on the field production, he didn't do a whole lot this year, kind of in that reserve role. But nonetheless, still a piece to that backfield.
Well, they're already down running backs.
They are. They're injury riddled, and now James Cook is really going to have to stay healthy and be productive for an entire game versus getting spelled, because it looks like they're not going to be able to afford that type of split in the backfield.
Yeah, just glad he's okay. Gave the thumbs up, and I saw a report this morning already that he was out of the hospital. Nothing's broken. It's just a really compounded the neck and a sore neck, and I'm sure he'll get a couple weeks off. The story I think for a lot of people was Damar Hamlin's jersey being retired on the ambulance with the Bills.
It's a little weird.
It's a little. I mean, you get the sentiment.
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
But it also is like that's like poor Damar sitting there on the sideline, and he played last week. He didn't play this week, and you're just seeing that was like, good God, like
it's kind of like a constant reminder then, and it's like, I don't want to live that every time I see a teammate need to go to an ambulance to see my jersey on the ambulance. I don't.
You're in the Bills ambulance sponsored by the Damar Hamlin #3 jersey. Yeah, it was a little weird. I think that was social media of everyone's just kind of like, well, is that what I think it is? But for Buffalo, Cook has played well, but you're right. Now the depth is not existent at all. So that's going to be obviously something to watch out for.
The only other one that I think was worth note, and I may be missing some, obviously there are injuries.
Tannehill.
I know. That's right. I didn't have him down here. Tannehill might be out, which, gosh, I mean, they brought Malik Willis in, and
he's bad. He's not good.
He did. The box score makes it look like he did all right, but he was not. He's not looking very good back there.
Watch the film
yet again, and which is just this goes to show that as much as you enjoy our commentary. And we hope that we provide people with, well-rounded, analysis, that we are not NFL personnel for a reason, because I was pounding the table for the Steelers to draft Malik Willis in the first round over Kenny Pickett. And today I am so glad that they literally, Matt Corral was a part of that,
I know.
And
whatever you say leading up to a draft, it should be null and void. We all get
for entertainment purposes. Clearly,
we all get too excited when we get close to the draft, and so it should be null and void. But yeah, he's. I think they should at this moment, if he's out, you say to Malik, if it's like a 2 week, maybe a 3 week thing, Malik has like the first half, and if he struggles, I would go straight to Levis personally. Just go to Levis. Give the kid a week to prepare.
Levis has been out for the last couple weeks, and I'm not sure if that's injury related or if he's been a scratch because they're only playing
I
two
don't know either,
I'm
but
not sure.
I think it's the time to like let the rookie play a little bit.
Yeah,
because Malik Willis just is not the guy. I mean, even you would hope after having a whole year and some experience last year, and then a whole nother offseason, he'd come out and play more mature football. But he just looked. I mean, he looked like a puppy trying to chase his tail out there.
This looks more like a situation, and I don't mean to make a broad statement that anyone can do this, but I wonder if like we're already getting into the territory of maybe he needs to move into like a Taysom Hill type of role, right?
Yeah,
Because he's got the athleticism and he's big. Maybe he can kind of convert himself into an H-back type of situation and be a little bit more beneficial in terms of his longevity in his career, because even as a backup, it's not looking positive right now. But then again, he hasn't had many reps. So, but that's the situation we're in right now. And then David Montgomery goes down for the Lions. That's a brutal injury because obviously Jahmyr Gibbs was a high draft pick, but they haven't been using him in any sort of every down role, and he was out. David Montgomery comes in. He's been great so far this year when healthy. Gets a rib injury, might miss some time. Not clear how long, but it might only be a week or two. If that's the case, that's great news because the Lions are humming, as we'll get to. But just something to kind of note there, that their backfield may be down a little bit, and they're going to have to lean a little more into that run game. And Sam Laporta too was coming off of injury this past week. So we'll see if they'll be able to get back to full strength sooner rather than later. That should kind of do it for the premier injuries. I know Trevor Lawrence was dealing with soreness in his knee. They play Thursday, so it's possible he doesn't play. I'd be surprised, though. I kind of feel like he's just that kind of guy that goes out and toughs it out and plays. And if it's just soreness related, he'll be out there. But more to come on that later. So let's get into the slate of games, and we'll touch kind of like we did last week, more broadly on a lot of these games, very quick analysis, and we'll stick with some narratives of certain games that are of more importance before getting and ending the show with Mark's Super Bowl plane. So getting into it first, the Thursday night game, we had the Broncos at the Chiefs, and the Chiefs won 19-8 in very convincing fashion. Despite Russell Wilson actually looking decent many times throughout this year, never being able to put a full game package deal put together, and just looked brutal this week yet again. So it really is seeming now, Mark, that the trend is, unfortunately, and I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have 6 games with Sean Payton era, and we have a full season with the Nathaniel Hackett era. It just seems like the big question surrounding this game is whether or not Russell Wilson will ever be the Russell Wilson of the past, or if this is time to say it's done and they're going to have to find a way to completely move off of him. I know we've talked about next year being a likely chance that they will part ways. It's just seeming every week now it's getting closer and closer to a split between Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos, despite the massive amount of money they paid him to get there.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to do it. I just think that part of it is Russell Wilson he used to be able, like we were so used to just Russell Wilson being automatic when you said, who's got the best deep ball in the league? Oh, Russell Wilson throws the best deep ball, high arc, and just like breadbasket, always landing in Lockett, in DK Metcalf's, hands. And it's just gone. Like that element to his game just seems gone. And he just seems extremely slow, extremely almost immobile at times. And there's just no pop. And in a lot of ways, he looks like older Drew Brees. And the problem being is that this Denver offense is just not built like that to be successful the way that Saints offense was with Sean Payton. I don't know how they're going to fix it long-term in the future, but right now, overall, I'd say the Denver Broncos are absolutely one of the 3 worst teams in the NFL. And if you look at his stats, just box score on the season, he's got more touchdowns and less interceptions than Mahomes on the season. But none of it is equating to wins. Now, I know the defense is a large part of that, and they're just not playing good defense. But I actually thought the defense stepped up against Mahomes and the Chiefs. The Chiefs seem to be playing with their food a little bit. A lot of people are wondering if there's concern, if you're concerned if you're Kansas City. I wouldn't be concerned yet. There's just it's a long season. You're winning games. You've won, 5 in a row. I think for the Chiefs, they have the best defense of the Patrick Mahomes era. So I'm very, very high on the Chiefs right now. They haven't lost to the Broncos since Peyton Manning, which is just a wild, wild thing to think about.
Insane.
And for the Broncos, they just they're selling off pieces now. Gregory and Clark are gone. I don't know where they go necessarily because they don't have the picks. You know what I mean? It's a little like Carolina, like, oh, well, they're bad. They're going to get a high pick. And it's like, nope, they don't even have the pick. So, it is a world of hurt for the Denver Broncos right now.
Brutal situation for Denver. They're going to have to figure a lot of things out moving the rest of the season and beyond. We'll go to the aforementioned game with Ryan Tannehill being injured in the London game, Ravens at the Titans, technically. 24-16 win for Baltimore. Big win for the Ravens here, I thought. And for the Steelers who were on a bye, it was a brutal bye week for them because every team in the AFC North won their respective games. But the Ravens moved to 4-2 on the season. And, Lamar, that first half was incredible, put together a great first half. Zay Flowers gets his first career touchdown in this one. And, even despite some questionable play calls and things like that for Baltimore, they looked buttoned up and they really got out to an early lead in this game and just never relinquished it after that. So Tennessee, in a troublesome situation, if they're not able to get anything going through the air, they're not the powerhouse juggernaut at running the football that they were that could maybe get them by in years past. And that's the problem now, is just they're not getting enough production from the other aspects of the offense. Derrick Henry is great, but you can only scheme Derrick Henry open so many times to where it's just like, okay, he's a big guy, he'll lean forward. But when they need big plays, that's not where they're going to get it. And they're not able to get it right now from DeAndre Hopkins. Only one catch, I believe, in this game, which is kind of inexcusable if you ask me. But that's just the situation they're in right now. And without a Ryan Tannehill at 2-4, they very well, the way that the Texans are playing and the Colts playing, tough, they're staring into maybe being in the basement of the AFC South instead of, the two young rookie quarterback led teams that we thought.
The only thing that I can put my faith in with the Titans is Vrabel. I believe in Mike Vrabel. I think he is a good coach.
Yeah.
And I think that the problem is just this roster has gotten old really quick, and they've created some huge holes really quickly. That offensive line is not what it was a couple of years ago when Henry was running for 2,000 yards. Derrick Henry is not necessarily the same player. And a lot of the coaching is gone. That was Matt LaFleur. That was Arthur Smith. Those guys are gone. And that offense just hasn't looked the same. And it just seems like they're trying to imitate what they used to be. And that's the worst thing you can do in the NFL. It hasn't adapted to what they currently have and the players they have. And I, again, like we said at the beginning, I think if Tannehill's, if he has to miss a 2 or 3 week stretch right now, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your fan base, get the rookie snaps, get Will Levis some snaps. He's a high pick. He is a guy that, a lot of people thought should have been a first-round pick. He's a guy that has a ton of arm talent, and so maybe he can provide a spark. Who knows? I mean, C.J. Stroud is coming in. He's absolutely playing really great football. So you got to get your rookie some snaps. If he's healthy and everything's right, then I would absolutely use this as a chance, a test time in the middle of the season. When Ryan's healthy, go back to Tannehill and keep running the game plan the way you thought the season. On the other side for the Ravens, absolutely. I think problem is the Ravens just struggle in the red zone right now. I mean, trust me.
Yeah,
I love the field goals. Yeah. I have Justin Tucker as my kicker in fantasy. He single-handedly helped me
in this game.
Win my fantasy matchup this week. He's my second highest scoring player. But yeah, that's the only thing that's a little bit of a concern to me right now is Baltimore just doesn't seem yet like they're able to finish the game and step on the throat of an opponent like we saw, earlier in the year from other teams. So Baltimore is the vibes got to be good. They made the right game plan, right? They got to London earlier. Tennessee got there not until Thursday night, Friday morning. That is a recipe for disaster for the team that shows up second to London. You got to get there early. Glad the London games are on pause for a minute, and because I think they overall are a bad product just because basically it just is determined. The winner is determined as who's got the most acclimation to a time zone, and I think that's a stupid way to play football. But I think the Ravens are starting to really find a groove and click. And if they can convert these field goals into touchdowns, they could be a really dangerous team.
Yeah, Todd Monken's done a great job there as the OC. It's just been in the red zone, as you mentioned. The play calling's been a little suspect. They're,
Yeah.
running into stacked boxes when you've got, I just they're not utilizing Mark Andrews, which is bizarre in the red zone.
Yeah,
He's
I
such a
agree.
good body, a great route runner. He should be getting peppered with targets every red zone trip, just because of his unique nature. And it's not like you got studs on the outside yet.
Yeah.
So maybe find Zay Flowers open in the middle a little bit more and use Mark Andrews' size to your advantage in those situations. And, maybe they'll start to convert those a little
They
bit
need
better.
to listen to you there, not just because he's on my fantasy team, but also just because it's the right thing to do.
It is, absolutely. The Commanders go on the road at the Falcons, and this kind of brings up another
Love this
situation.
win.
We were talking about the
Love
Titans.
this win.
It was a great win for the Commanders.
Yeah.
The Falcons are in a very peculiar spot. Desmond Ridder had a brutal game with 3 bad picks, including a red zone pick where you just saw the Arthur Smith putting both of his hands on his head, like, what are we doing? But then again, I mean, this is technically his rookie season because he didn't get to play much at all last year. And so the question remains for the Falcons in how do you want to play this moving forward? Because they're a team that is too good to bottom out entirely. And that's kind of what we've seen the past few years. But they're in that quarterback purgatory even more so than like the teams with decent quarterbacks that we've seen, like Dallas is in quarterback purgatory. This is even worse because, you have guys that are, winning you, 6-7 games a year, but you need to get to that 3 to 4 or 5 wins section to get a great quarterback. Do they need to ride this out with Desmond Ridder, or do they need to rip the Band-Aid off, get in Taylor Heineke, who is probably going to win you some more games? But the question is, clearly Arthur Smith wants to compete. And so he's probably going to end up going with Taylor Heineke at some point. The problem is then you're not going to get the quarterback of the future. But if you let Desmond Ridder keep putting you in this position, maybe it does get better. If you keep, that's the risk you take here is he doesn't have a large sample size. So maybe they just have to keep giving him these opportunities. But they may not win as many games as they wanted. On the flip side, they may win too many games to get a quarterback. It's a tough one. I don't know which way to go.
You got to ride with Ridder. If you're not trading for Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins has already said he's not going to waive his no trade clause, which I think is smart of Kirk, because I think if you're Kirk, your best hope is to keep all hope alive with Minnesota to where they sign you to like a Geno Smith type deal, right? To where you win too many games, they don't really get the right quarterback, or maybe they do draft a quarterback, but they don't want to start him right away, so they're going to give you a nice 1 year, another guaranteed deal just to stay there to mentor the young guy, and you don't have to move your family and do all that stuff. I think it's the right move for Kirk. If you have a no trade clause, you do not owe it to waive it. Like that's on the organization. That's on you. You have it. You're right. And they just won a game, so they're moving. But I think if Atlanta would be one place I'd consider waiving my no trade clause if I was Kirk, because they do have a lot of weapons. They are in a winnable division. He could go down there and say, all right, sign me to a nice 2 or 3 year deal where we have this window where we're building something, and I'll help you win games, and you can draft a quarterback, 15th, 16th overall, maybe trade up for one like the Packers did where you trade back into the first round to get one, or pick up a guy in the second round who you might believe in more if they do that. But if they don't do that, stick with Ridder 100%. Heineke, yes, will win you more games. Arthur Smith shouldn't be worried about his job. I think it's very obvious it's not Arthur Smith who's the problem with Atlanta. It's been a slow build of this roster. It's a slow build. Now they got to find that final piece. And Ridder may still be it, but I mean, yeah, he needs to play a lot more football for if he's your guy or not. Right now, it's trending down. I don't have a lot of positivity towards it. On the flip side, Howell looked really good. Howell went on the road, having, after a bad game, being embarrassed on national TV by the Bears, a well-coached team with Ron Rivera. They look prepared to go, ready to go on the road in Atlanta and win a football game. Kudos to them. Kudos to their offensive coaching staff. And right now, Sam Howell absolutely is playing like he's keeping his job. It's still early, and it's a long, long season. There are going to be a lot of bad Sam Howell games to come, but knock on wood, I really think He's playing well enough right now that they're going to roll with him, depending on what the franchise does in the future of the new ownership. And really nice play from the Commanders to get to where they're at. And trust me, I'm rooting against Atlanta. You should know this. I picked them to not have a great year. I've bet multiple human beings that Atlanta won't win 8 games. I need that money to stay in my pocket. So I will be rooting hard against Atlanta throughout this. So play Ritter. Let the kid learn. Let the man learn.
There you go.
Throw some red zone interceptions. Let the boy learn.
Some completely objective analysis from Mark
Absolutely.
Heston.
Listen, we are here. We are the Fox News, fair and balanced of the of football coverage.
Very, very true. The Vikings and Bears were in a matchup that were both playing kind of for their season, essentially. Yes. Next question. The Vikings obviously get the win 19-13. It looked bad for both teams in this game. Bears defense actually probably looked as good as they've looked all season.
I know.
In many respects, right? And unfortunately, as you alluded to earlier, Fields didn't have a very good game, gets hurt, and the rest is history. So the Bears are now at 1-5. Vikings at 2-4. Neither team looking promising. Bears almost at this point surely missing the playoffs. Vikings most likely as well. So hard to have any grand takeaways at this point from this matchup, given that both teams are just not very good. But you would curious your takes on this game, what it means for Minnesota, but more importantly, what it means for your Bears. You kind of touched on it earlier, but maybe just a more general outlook in terms of especially the next month. Do they just need to tank at this point and go get Caleb Williams?
Well, I'll say this. I'll start with the Vikings. Listen, the Vikings, they barely won that game. I mean, they did not look good at all. The Bears had every opportunity to steal that game away from the Vikings. When Justin Fields went down, they didn't even step on the throat type of now is our chance to take advantage. For the Vikings, I'll say this. One thing I would really be worried about if I was a Vikings fan is that they just do not have a run game, a consistent run game at all. And without Justin Jefferson, the rest of the offense looks very much like an okay NFL offense. Justin Jefferson, when you have a player like that, he makes everyone better because of how much more open they are, because of how much attention he gets. And the rest of the offense just looks like a very okay NFL offense without him. Offensive line play, no running game. And like I mentioned earlier with Kirk, he's going to be the starting quarterback. They don't have anyone else to okay, we're going to go into tank mode and we're going to bench Kirk for. He's the guy. And the best thing he can do for himself and his future is win games. Win as many games as possible. Get as far away, your team as far away from the top of the draft as possible. For these veteran quarterbacks, guys who are trying to hang on to their jobs, the Ritters, the Fieldses, the Kyler Murrays when he comes back, the best thing you can do for yourself is to get your team as far away from the top of the draft as humanly possible. And so on the opposite side for the Bears, there's not much else to say at this point. I mean, again, this game proves that this is one of the worst coached teams in football. People who are calling for Ryan Poles, I guess that's the one I'm still struggling with. I get it. His record as a GM is the same record as the coach. It's bad. I get it. Roquan Smith is balling out in Baltimore, and you didn't want to pay him. And Edmonds has been underwhelming. TJ Edwards has been very good, but Edmonds has been underwhelming, and you paid him almost as much as Roquan got. And it's well, he doesn't fit our scheme, and we don't want to pay a linebacker that much money.
Yeah, the scheme's not working.
Yeah. And so, again, I struggle with Poles because there's been a lot of good from Poles. I think there's a lot to like about what Poles has done. You know what I mean? There are some players in Darnell Wright and some guys that he's brought into the back end with Brisker and Gordon and made some moves to save money, to be really flexible. DJ Moore, that trade alone, that's on him. He made that trade happen. It's the best trade the Bears have done in a long, long time. So I don't get necessarily the harsh criticism of Poles because Eberflus isn't his guy. He didn't stump for Eberflus. He was basically told, unless you are 100% absolutely against this hiring this guy. We're hiring this guy. And the problem is by the time Poles got hired, the other good candidates were off the table anyways. And Eberflus was the guy that was recommended to the Bears by Polian. So until Eberflus is fired, it's not worth talking about next year. It's not worth talking about draft picks because we learned our lesson as NFL fans. The Texans had the number 1 pick from week 1 till 2 minutes left in week 17 last year, and they missed out on pick number 1 and it ended up going to the Chicago Bears at the very end of it. Anything can happen with this. Now, the only difference is until the Panthers win a game, it looks like the Bears have a lock with the number 1 overall pick because of them owning the Panthers pick. So I can allow a little bit more discussion about that. But again, I'm not willing to discuss any more about what the Bears will do with the number 1 overall pick and Caleb Williams versus Justin Fields debate until I know what they're going to do with the head coach. If you keep the head coach, there is no point in drafting a new quarterback because he is a head coach that I do not believe in. And so why would I want to give a new quarterback the torture of having to deal with this coaching staff? It is an inept, bad coaching staff. And so once you fire the coaching staff and you make those changes, then I'm all in on let's see the changes. Let's do all this. Let's restart and we can have those conversations. I will just say from a scheme wise and actually watching the game, I will give Tyson Bagent. I will support him. I want the Bears to win football games. I root for my team. I do not like watching my team lose over and over and over again. They've done more losing than anyone in the last 2 seasons. So I will root for him. But as soon as Justin Fields is healthy, he should be the starter. I want to watch Justin Fields play football. He deserves it. We deserve it as fans to know for sure as much tape as on possible what the situation is until the end of the year is up.
There were some big games, big wins this week, but one of them for sure didn't involve the 2 undefeated teams, but rather it was the Cincinnati Bengals edging out the Seattle Seahawks 17-13 in a must-have game for Cincinnati. If they fell to 2-4, they would have been in a really rough situation. Seattle still very much in play in the division, 3-2, and they've looked pretty good. But for Cincinnati to eke out a tough victory in this one, neither team looked particularly dominant or impressive. But Bengals win 17-13. Geno Smith throws 2 picks. This was a get right for the Bengals defense more than anything else. That was a defense that had struggled, and they really needed to step up because their offense had been so poor. Offense obviously came through big last week. Takes a little bit of a step back this week, so the defense stepped up in their stead. So Bengals now right back in the thick of things in the AFC North. Huge win for them. I thought that was a statement win outside of the other 2, of course, that involved the undefeated teams. I thought that was the 3rd best win of the weekend.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add to that. I agree with you completely. It was a great win for the Bengals. They should not hang their head that they had a scrappy win against the Seattle team that I thought outplayed them for large portions of that game. They were playing better football. I thought even their running game.
It definitely ran the football better for sure.
Overall, the way they played. But again, you find a way to win at home against a very good Seattle team. You take that, you hold your head up high. And the best news is your quarterback leaves healthy as he, you know what I mean? Like there's no other worry about re-injuring, aggravating, nothing. So great for the Bengals. For Seattle, no panic. Off a bye, you would have loved to steal that game on the road. But your schedule is still workable, and Seattle is in a unique spot because the NFC is 3 teams at the top, and everything else is completely up for grabs. And Absolutely. Seattle looks like one of those teams in the NFC in that second tier. There should be a leader of the second tier. Like right now, especially depending on how tonight's game goes, I might argue that Seattle is the third best team in the NFC, 4th best team in the NFC, ahead of Dallas, ahead of New Orleans, ahead of the Tampas. You know what I mean? Like there, maybe the Rams, you'd argue, but that's the company they're in. So it's good company to be in, especially to be the best of that company. The problem is that you're just worried about the division and the Niners running away from you, but you got help from the Browns.
Yeah, they certainly did, and that's a good segue into our next game. But before we get to that huge victory by the Cleveland Browns, here's a word from our podcast network here on some of the other great shows that you can check out here on the For Frequency's Sake Podcast Network.
For Frequency's Sake has you covered on all things sports. From the squared circle to the hardwood and the gridiron to the speedway, we've got something for everyone. Walk down the aisle with the boys from Cards Subject to Change every Sunday as they take a deep dive into everything pro wrestling. Need your gambling fix? We've got you there. Enter Pit Row with Rod Villagomez and Fast Money as we win the checkered flag with NASCAR, Xfinity, and truck race winners and props. Football more your style? Explore the waters of NFL DFS with DFS Deep Dive with Brian Craighead and Jordan Kernan each week. More into the science portion of the game? We've got a double dose of action there. The Professor John Bush and Dennis Michelson take you into their science lab and dissect your week in the data lab. Want an analytical take? Nick Gurl and the team at Gridiron AI come to you each week with The Lab. Need to know who to start last minute? The network's flagship show, For Fantasy's Sake, is here in a pinch. The fellows come to you live every football Sunday from 10 to 11:30 Central with the week's best DFS, gambling, and lineup advice. And wrap up your Sundays with Joe Winkle and Nick Brinks as they come to you live with educated ignorance looking at all the day's action. Can't get enough of Joe? He comes to you 3 times a week. Not enough football on Sunday? Not a problem. Kick your feet up at lunch on Monday and slip on into the football lounge with Mark and Dan while they look at the week that was in news, notes, and more. For Frequency's Sake, you know what we mean.
All right, well, we mentioned it. The Cleveland Browns with a huge victory over the San Francisco 49ers, delivering San Fran its first loss of the season and first in the last 16 games. 19-17, Browns escape with a win. Huge performance from their defense. Obviously, Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey left this game early, so some big injuries there for the 49ers side, but no excuses. Cleveland was injury riddled as well. They didn't have their starting quarterback, their $230 million quarterback. Yeah. PJ Walker steps in to lead the team. Not an impressive game yet again. It was another low-scoring game that we saw this week. But the Browns, just like the Bengals, hanging tough after some difficult losses in division to stay at 3-2 and really put themselves still firmly in that position in the AFC North. Big win for Cleveland. And, I'm not worried from a San Francisco perspective. The team obviously lost 2 of its biggest playmakers. But I will say, they're going to have to find ways to, get back to the dominant offensive performances we saw earlier. Because, we've seen now, like, when these teams are in close, tight battles, things can get really dicey real quick. Because Brock Purdy's not Patrick Mahomes, and it's just they need to stay on schedule. They need to stay on rhythm. And when they're kind of thrown off of it, there are some weaknesses that you can poke in. I still think they're the best team in the league as of right now. But all of that being said, they'll probably bounce back. Cleveland was one of the best defenses in the league. And so, you'll tip your cap to them. But on the flip side, Cleveland needed that win, and it was a massive statement from them.
Yeah, not worried about San Francisco. This is a game that obviously you would circle as a win if you were a Niners fan. And I think part of what losing this game was, listen, you're coming off an emotional big-time win on primetime football. You got to travel to Cleveland. It's wet. It's cold. Deshaun Watson's not playing. You may have been sleepwalking a little in the first half thinking, we'll play with our food. And then all of a sudden, CMC and Deebo are out. And then the game plan changes a bit. Brock Purdy wasn't great, but who is great against that Cleveland defense? Yeah. That Cleveland defense is without a doubt one of the 3 best defenses in the NFL. They are phenomenal. And so I'm not worried about San Francisco. I will say the only thing that I would concern me if I was San Francisco is like you draft a kicker high in like round 3, I think it was, for Jake Moody.
Yep.
His whole family was there. You saw the photo going viral. Like he took a big photo with his family before the game.
Opportunity to win, game winner.
And he missed
41 yards.
multiple kicks. And that's a concern. That's a concern, especially when you had Robbie Gould for the last 6-7 years and he was so good. He's automatic. And you move on with this high draft pick kicker. It's like, yuck. So, yeah. I mean, they're not a perfect team. They're close to perfect. And I think losing a game is never a bad thing in the NFL because it takes the pressure off. You don't have to worry about the undefeated season. No more Brock Purdy. He's never lost a regular season game he started. All those stats are now dead. I think that's a good thing for them. For Cleveland, what a win. It just goes to show you that this team, I think, is actually really well coached. I don't think it's Stefanski's its problem when they're struggling offensively. I think he's a good coach. I think this is a really great roster, and it just makes you question even more, like, what's really going on with Watson? They say it's a nerve in the throwing shoulder. Well, what the fuck does that mean? Like, how? Like, that's one of those things where we say to ourselves, and if I was a fan, I'd be like, so he's healthy, he can play. Right now, though, the problem is he's got a nerve. We don't know what it's going to take for that to get 100% healthy, for him to feel confident. The big thing I read is he can't drive the ball downfield. Well, that's what Deshaun Watson does best. He's not an accurate pick-your-part guy. So, listen, they can hang on for maybe another week or two without him, and getting this win certainly will alleviate some of the stress of rushing him back. But this is
you just got to wonder why they didn't put him on IR a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Clearly they felt that
he could be ready.
Clearly it's a situation where it's like, we don't know from day to day. And that's obviously a difficult spot for a team to be in, because they want to, trot him out there whenever he's ready. But now you've got this roster spot that's constantly being taken up, and
the AFC North is looking really interesting. They all beat each other up. Everyone can beat each other in division for the most part. It's going to be a lot of those. Whenever if you're a fan of the AFC North, you've got to win every game that's not against the AFC North, because
the winner might be 10-7 this year. I mean,
it could be less. I mean, the way they beat these teams beat each other up, it's crazy. Yeah,
it really is. The Panthers were up 14-0, looking for their first win of the season.
Wild
the Dolphins.
First quarter.
If the Panthers won this game, it would have been an absolutely bonkers week, with the Eagles, the 49ers going down, and then the Panthers beating the Dolphins. But that's not the case. Miami won 42-21. They absolutely ran away with it in the second half. Really starting in the second quarter, 21 unanswered. And then, just kind of went on autopilot at that point. No Devon Achane, no problem. Tyreek Hill looked great in this one. So the Dolphins put up another 40-burger on the season. Panthers 0-6. I guess the encouraging part, Mark, is that we are seeing some improvements with Bryce Young. There's, and Joe Person, who we had on the show earlier this year before the draft as well, reporter for The Athletic for the Carolina Panthers, wrote an article where he was stating how the first half was an indicator of how Bryce Young has improved as a quarterback, and the second half was a good indicator of how he's improved as a leader on the field, because he really had that demeanor of never quitting, seemed to rally the troops. The guys seemed to like him. So those are positive aspects from Bryce Young. We've seen C.J. Stroud dominate as a rookie, and he's looking so much better. But these are aspects that you want to see out of your quarterback, even when you're 0-6, to have some good moments coming out of those. No moral victories, but you'll take the improvements with the loss.
Yeah, the C.J. Stroud, the biggest problem C.J. Stroud has right now is that he has
Bryce Young?
Bryce Young, is that he's trying to live up to the number one pick, right? If you have the number one pick, you should never draft the guy who's just not the size. Like, size, there should be a size requirement to be the number one pick.
Can't miss type prospect for that. Yes.
You call him like God only makes certain people certain sizes. There's a lot of human beings on this planet that are the same size as Bryce Young. There are not a lot of human beings on the planet that are the same size as a Josh Allen, for example. Throw a name out there. It's the same thing with Baker Mayfield, like when he was drafted number one overall. Like, now he's really resurrecting his career a little bit and showing the Sam Darnold haters and all that wrong. But like, there should just be that moment where you say to yourself, am I really about to draft a guy number one overall who, if you was walking by you in the grocery store, you would have no idea he's an NFL player? That's a problem.
I guess the counter is that, people would say Drew Brees or Russell Wilson, but to your point,
they weren't number one
those
picks.
Are massive anomalies.
And they weren't number one picks.
They would have been worth a number one pick, though.
Oh, but that's point, again, late. Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah,
like you should not. Like, I'm just talking purely about like the pressure of the number one pick.
I agree. And those are two anomalies for the entire history of the league. So I totally get you.
Well, it's the same with Kyler Murray. I mean, he's trying to live up to the number one pick. Like, the whole thing. You put the number one pick on this guy,
and he was an exceptional prospect versus Bryce Young, I think you'd say, right? Like,
well,
Bryce obviously had the accuracy down, but it wasn't.
They're both Heisman winners. I mean,
yeah.
So here's my thing. Carolina, I'll stand by. Carolina has a lot of work to do on their roster to help their young quarterback. And when they add help to that roster, then we can start fairly judging their young quarterback. For the Miami Dolphins, Miami is a team I really truly believe that if they can find a way to get home field for majority of the playoffs, they're going to be a tough out. They are different in Miami with that speed in the sun, in the Florida sun. They're something special and unique, and their offense is fun to watch. They are a great watch. If you haven't watched the Dolphins, watch the Dolphins. They're a fun watch. I mean, Tyreek Hill should absolutely be in MVP discussions if they keep going the way he's going, because he is the gadget that he's gadget
almost
that
at
makes
1,000 receiving yards.
Yeah, he's the gadget that makes that whole engine work, and it is a very beautiful engine to watch.
It's unbelievable. It really is. And with moving to this next game, when we've talked on the show about just can't miss types of guys, pretty quickly if someone is going to stick and be great in the NFL. I think we feel that already somewhat with CJ Stroud. Definitely have noticed that in other sports, like we're seeing with Connor Bedard, the number 1 overall pick for the Chicago Blackhawks.
Looks lovely.
Already looking incredible on the ice. Well, the same goes for Trevor Lawrence, and now 6 games into the season, we're starting to see the Jaguars putting it all together. 17-point victory over the rival Indianapolis Colts, 37-20.
Big win.
Huge win. Got the defense played great too, getting 3 interceptions to Gardner Minshew in this. Travis Etienne, somewhat of a breakout game, if you will, for him with a couple touchdowns in this game. And the offense really starting to put things together. So massive 37-20 victory for the Jaguars, who are now kind of planting themselves as the leaders of the AFC South. And I'm going to say that at this point, they are not going to relinquish that lead the rest of the season.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's a safe bet. I think, listen, for the Jaguars, again, slow start, but they are putting it together. I actually think for moments of that game, the Colts were playing really good football. The problem is that the Jags they do have a lot of talent, and Minshew just was making critical mistakes at critical times.
Yeah.
But the Jags capitalized on it. Listen, divisional games. If you win a divisional game by 2+ scores, then that is a great victory, because we have seen in division crazy things can happen where teams will beat other teams in division because it's just divisional games. So if you win a divisional game by more than 2 scores, I consider that a great win, and nice for the Jaguars. They've swept the Colts now in the season series. That certainly helps. And even worse news for the Colts. It looks like Richardson might have surgery now. Like, that's brutal. But especially because it's the throwing shoulder and it's so young into his career. That'd be a real concern if I was an Indianapolis Colts fan.
The Texans get a 20-13 win at home over the New Orleans Saints. I've got a lot of questions about the Saints, man. I just don't know. This offense looks brutal. Like this was our slam dunk pick to win the division, and they just have not been convincing in any game this year.
No.
Meanwhile, the Texans continue to overperform.
Well, they did look good in the win against New England, but now New England is starting to look like a bottom 3 team in the league.
Yeah,
so that's one thing. I will say this about New Orleans. Yeah, they truly don't have an identity. Are they a big play deep ball? They have Olave, they have Michael Thomas. Are they slants and under screens to just pick you apart 12-play drives? Well, they have guys who do that with Alvin Kamara as well, but they're not efficient enough, it feels like, to do that. They have a really solid defense. It's got a lot of veterans on it. I will say, I just think this is more, to me, this win was more just, I think the Texans have quickly become a well-coached, disciplined football team, and with a very solid young quarterback.
And they're smart.
They're smart.
Team.
And they have veterans like Jimmy Ward. They brought, DeMeco Ryans brought Jimmy Ward and all that knowledge of starting in San Francisco for 7-8 years, and said, you're coming with me to install this system with me in Houston. And you're seeing that. Like, those are those underrated moves that are really paying off. Jimmy Ward's not a Hall of Famer, but those are those underrated moves that are really paying off. I think it's a little bit more of, this says more about the Texans than it does the Saints. Tough to win on the road in the NFL, especially against a team that is finding their confidence right now, playing really good football. CJ Stroud, to me, is quickly becoming The Batman to the Superman in that division of Trevor Lawrence. This division is starting to feel a lot like Mahomes and you know what I mean? Like Mahomes and Herbert, Lawrence and Stroud. Like it's got the makings of that. And that's a really exciting thing for us as football fans.
The Raiders and the Patriots went toe-to-toe in Vegas, and the Patriots now
They kind of went just like butt to butt, and it was ugly. And you're just like, no, I don't want to watch this. What is happening?
That's a much better way of putting it, absolutely.
It's like, what are we
doing? The Raiders win 21-17. It just looks terrible.
Mac Jones is...
and he takes the sack in the end zone. You see the end of the game. Bill Belichick just slamming his Microsoft Surface into the ground. Things are not looking good for the Patriots, and I know it doesn't have anything to do with like this current season and trying to win now, but the fact that Bill Belichick was so close to the all-time wins record, and now it's just getting further and further away, and it's like you got to ask questions. Now it might take 2 more seasons for him to get the record, and are you going to bring him back for 2 more seasons given what we've seen post Tom Brady? And things just aren't working out better. We thought Bill O'Brien was going to be a big improvement for this offense, and I'm really having questions still about Mac Jones as an overall player, and also as Bill Belichick's ability to create a quality staff around him when he doesn't have a Hall of Fame quarterback. I mean, these are questions that, deservedly so have come up.
They're great questions. I think the biggest thing is for Bill Belichick, what he has to do to survive this and get another chance to be the coach, if he wants to be the coach for another, like, say, 3-year, 5-year contract, he needs to go into Robert Kraft's office and say, I will step away from the GM. Let's hire a GM. Because his drafts 100%. Have been terrible. They've hired they draft guards. They have no skill positions. There's no talent on that offense. And the defense still has players, and he can still coach defense, but they need a general manager who will say, I'm going to hire your offensive coordinator. I'm going to help you hire your new offensive coordinator. I'm going to pick your next quarterback. I'm going to find you the wide receivers, and you coach the football team and get this team back to being disciplined and playing really solid NFL football, because that's just, they look undisciplined. They look at a massive talent dearth, and it is really, really showing with Mac Jones. I don't know if Mac Jones is done in the league, but I think he's done with New England. Like, this is just not, it's just not working. And I don't think it's necessarily all his fault, but he is making dumb decisions too. It is his fault. It is his fault he took the sack in the end zone. Like, there are things like that is your fault. Like, it's Justin Fields' fault that you're extending the plays and get yourself hurt. Like, you can throw the ball away or just take the sack or get the ball out quicker. Like, that is your fault. That's not the coach's fault. So on the other side for the Raiders, not much to say except for what we said at the beginning. Scrappy. They're kind of a fun watch because it's chaotic. McDaniels is so dumb, and I don't like him. And good luck to Raiders fans. It's got to be annoying as heck to have him as your coach. And overall, Jimmy G, the injury status will be huge. We could get Aiden O'Connell versus Tyson Bagent next week, Bears versus Raiders. That might be the ugliest game in NFL history.
Watch it be like 50-45. Like,
it could be. It very well could be.
Very well could be. The Rams get a victory 26-9 over the Arizona Cardinals, who, despite looking good at many times this year, are 1-5. So they are falling backwards a little bit, but that was to be expected to begin with. Meanwhile, the Rams are 3-3, so they have 3 of their 5 wins on the season, as I had predicted earlier in the year. So that's looking worse and worse by the day. But overall, the Rams get another key victory in the NFC West. Go to 500. I think the questions now are still wondering what's going to happen with Kyler Murray for the Arizona Cardinals, if they're going to just stick with the game plan as is, and try and build through next year's draft. And for the Cardinals, I guess my question, just speaking for myself, is, are the Rams legit? Is this a team that will be competing for a wild card spot this year? I do still have concerns. But I got to, give them credit. They've been winning convincingly at several times this year.
The Rams are well coached. They have a lack of overall talent, but they have high-end talent with the quarterback play, the wide receiver play, and then along the defensive line.
Kyron Williams has been very good too.
Yeah. So they are interesting. They're one of those teams I feel like a college football team that like loses their first couple games early in the year, But then by the end of the year, they're like 10-2, and you're like, wait a minute, are they one of the better teams now in college football? Like, their young guys are just learning. I think they're growing as the season goes on. So I'm really excited to see where the Rams keep going. And again, they beat a division opponent by more than 2 scores. It's a good win. Like, that's a good win. I know it's the Cardinals. I'll say this about the Cardinals. I'm starting to feel, and I wonder how Cardinals Nation's starting to feel. They're so scrappy, and they're scrappy enough. It is starting to feel like the best thing they should do is to play Kyler Murray when he's healthy, to figure out if Kyler Murray with this scrappy team is something that then if you add 2 top 10 picks to next year, like a Marvin Harrison and then like the best, defensive lineman or offensive lineman with their 2 top 10 picks, like all of a sudden they could have a really quick turnaround. And so if Kyler comes back and plays well, and if Kyler comes back and plays really terrible, then you have options at quarterback, right? You make that move. So that'd be my mindset I'd be shifting to if I was a Cardinals fan. I know the dream is Caleb Williams, but it looks at this point in time like the Panthers they might win 1-2 if they're lucky. And if the second worst team in the league, the Bears look way worse than the Cardinals. They may win 1 or 2 games, 3 if they're lucky. Cardinals feel like they're going to back their way into 3 wins with Dobbs. You got to play Kyler when he's healthy so you know what Kyler is. So if I were the Cardinals, I would lean towards that as my plan. And I don't think it's the worst place in the world to be with Kyler Murray and 2 top 10 picks next year to add a ton of talent, high-end talent to that roster that's already scrappy.
Well, the Philadelphia Eagles have been playing with fire much of this year, Mark. We talked about how they, were finding ways to win despite not having everything put together, and it finally came back to bite them this past
found a way
weekend.
to lose.
Yeah, in one of the best wins of the year by any team. The New York Jets needed this so bad. They get to 500, 20-14 victory. Zach Wilson looked pretty serviceable and good at times throughout this game. So that was probably encouraging for the Jets to at least know that they can have a fighting chance each week. Especially with how good that defense is. And Robert Saleh obviously pumped up after the game, saying they've gone through a slog of amazing quarterbacks this year and embarrassed all of them. I don't know if they've embarrassed all of them, but most of them for sure. And they get the 20-14 victory, their first win ever against the Philadelphia Eagles, now 1-12 all time for the Jets. But, big win for the New York Jets. And, Philly, they just got to figure some things out, but they're 5-1. There are much, much worse situations to be in. They're still one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, I wouldn't panic if I was Philly. What I would say this about Philly is that, again, on the road, tough conditions against a very good defense, a top 5 defense in the NFL that was desperate. They played desperate, and Philly did not. And Philly should have won that game. Hurts really bad interception late. And I wish that I said a couple weeks ago, Philly had found their identity when they were running the ball really, really well. The run game was non-existent against a very good Jets front. And if I'm Philly, the one thing I'd be disappointed with is if you could run the ball in those last couple series and just eat some clock, you absolutely win this game. So I would be frustrated with my coaching staff panicking and going away from develop the run game, middle of the game. How can you not see what the Jets are doing and try to adjust to it where you could still run the ball effectively? That would be my concern. For the Jets, I will say, massive win. The 72 Dolphins popping champagne. They're feeling good. The Eagles had the pressure off of the undefeated season. But for the Jets, this is what exactly they need to do. They are proving to their fans and themselves that Saleh's still the guy. Nathaniel Hackett's developing some solid game plans to help Zach Wilson minimize as many stupid things as possible. That's all good. And can you hang around enough, just enough, to where if you're around 500 in week 16, 17, can the bad man come back? You know what I mean? Like, that's the storyline. I don't think it's possible. I don't think he comes back. I think it'd be silly to risk it in that way. But I also feel like it's a bad franchise. And so if Aaron says I'm playing, they'll play him. So that's, to me, the thing to watch. Like, can they stay relevant enough for us to get to that moment where that will be a content machine?
Yeah, seriously. There have been some reports as recent as today talking about a week 12 return. Now, a lot of doctors are saying that his recovery is beyond anything that they've anticipated. And honestly, I don't like we obviously I have no insight into his recovery, but a lot of it seems like it very well could be public facing image type of stuff. Fighting through some intense pain to show I'm walking without crutches. Now maybe that's not the case. Maybe he really is healing at an enormous rate. It's just it's a massive anomaly, and I wouldn't put it past him. He's trying hard. But yeah, it's just I would temper expectations for a lot of people out there that are like, this is going to be a miracle comeback. There's probably still a very, very far way to go before we can entertain him going back on the field. But if he comes back, that'd be impressive.
It's up to the Jets to give us that moment. They got to stay around 500, and they've done that right now so far.
Yeah. Yep. They're fighting. The Lions go on the road and get a win 20-6 over the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, despite the loss, still 3-2. So they're looking much better than anticipated. Lions 5-1. And so, Detroit, despite losing David Montgomery, have been churning along. They got Jameson Williams back. Obviously, after his suspension, he gets a big touchdown in this game. So look, this offense is going according to plan, and they're kind of starting to get back that offensive fireworks through the air that we saw last year. They were much more leaning into the run game. I wonder now if the Detroit Lions are starting to put it all together at the perfect time where they are going to start rolling. And at 5-1 mark, they're pretty much putting a stamp on the NFC North at this point.
I'll say this about the Bucs first, just really quick. This was their chance to really make the statement that, hey, we're a force in the NFC. And they just completely laid an egg at home, and they weren't good enough. And I think, again, it just goes to show you they're in that Seattle, Saints, Dallas group of teams that you're like, all right, these are quality teams. They can win games. But when it comes to the three elite teams in the NFC, they don't stack up right now. Now everything can change. Injuries happen, all that, blah, blah, blah. But right now, for the Detroit Lions, I think the stat that says it all is they are really good at running the football. Like, you think about them and you think hard-nosed, run the football, David Montgomery. They have been a very elite offensive line. And yet, the number one quarterback in the NFL for passing down the field, accuracy, completions, attempts, is Jared Goff. He is hitting big plays, and he's hitting them constantly with consistency and accurately, and they have the weapons to do it. Williams, St. Brown, Laporta, they have big play weapons, and Goff is right now, today, in this season of the NFL, the best down the field thrower in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
And that is dangerous for a team with a solid run game, a true physical identity, and a defense that is showing their teeth week in and week out to have a elite, deep passing game. And it's not like they just only throw one shot a game and that's why he's elite. They throw it a lot. He does a lot of deep shots. This is a chunk play offense. Reynolds, too, the other wide receiver. So I love the Detroit Lions right now. I think they are absolutely to be taken for real and seriously. And a dominating win, wire-to-wire kind of dominating win against an upstart Tampa team on the road helps me feel even more confident in saying that.
Yeah, they've been fantastic. What a turnaround for this franchise. And they had to make correct moves, and they did. They got Jared Goff. They got Dan Campbell. That's clearly a decision that's working out well. They made very smart draft choices, especially this last draft. So they are looking fantastic. They're 3-0 on the road. So, for a dome team, that's impressive
Huge.
too. And so, here they are at 5-1, looking like one of the league's best. Finally, before we get to the Marks Super Bowl plane, very excited for that. The Bills get a 14-9 win over the New York Giants. Very sloppy game from both sides here. The Bills got lucky to some extent because they could have given this game away at many, turns. Josh Allen did not look very good. The Giants had a good game plan defensively. But this is more concerning for the Giants because they just there's no direction right now. And Daniel Jones was hurt. He was not in the game. They had to start Tyrod Taylor. They're 1-5. Basement of the NFC East. No light at the end of the tunnel. Nothing looking, promising on the horizon for the Giants. This is just a really brutal situation and state of affairs for them. Buffalo, you escape with the win. You move on. You've got the offense and the defense to make it work. So they're 4-2. They'll be fine. But it's the Giants that are very concerning right now.
If I'm the Giants, you feel like they're probably in the second worst situation compared to the Denver Broncos. Like, and in both situations are similar in the sense you have a really high paid quarterback. You just don't know what to do with it now. Nothing is working. The moves you've made are not working. Your offensive line play is terrible. And you have a coach you believe in, but if they were that good, would they let their teams become this bad? So it leads into those questions as well. It's a mess in New York. And I'll say this about the Bills. Don't panic about last night. Like, again, like, don't panic. You're coming back from the long road trip. Like, you get a win at home. You're beat up. Your defense played well, even though it's missing some giant starters, and Milano and those guys. I get it. It's Tyrod Taylor and the Giants, but I wouldn't panic if I was the Bills. Again, if you want me to find the thing to be frustrated about, the thing I would be frustrated about is I think this team's depth is now a real concern. I mean, they are on life support at some really key positions, and that leads to Josh Allen doing Josh Allen things, which is a coin flip. I mean, Josh Allen is a coin flip. 50% of the time, the Josh Allen things are things that no one else on the planet can do. And the other 50% of things are like, good God, I want to rip my hair out because, like, what are you doing, Josh? So that's going to be the Bills for a little bit this season. I still think highly of the Bills because I think they have plenty of time to solve the issues, and they have time to bring guys in. The trade deadline hasn't happened yet. Go practice squad hunting, find some dudes to bring in to help, piece together this roster and give Josh Allen enough support to where he can not mash all the buttons at once.
All right. Well, flight number 4 of the Football Lounge Airways has officially taken flight. We are in the air, and I will let you introduce us to Mark's Super Bowl plane, the first of the new season.
Yeah, so what we always do if you listen to Football Lounge is opposed to power rankings, I like to break it down like you're on the plane to the Super Bowl. And first class are teams that I believe right now, those are the only teams that could win the Super Bowl. Like, there's no other teams that can win the Super Bowl. Business class are teams that can play in a championship game. They can absolutely play in a championship game. And then the coach or what do I call it? Economy class. Economy. Those are teams that will make the playoffs, I believe. And then who knows, they could get hot, or they're definitely lurking, right? They have a reason to be lurking. So Dan, let's kick it off. And I think we're starting with the first class. And I mean, it's no need to explain any of that. I think there are 3 teams in the NFC that all right now are the class of the NFC. I would be dumbfounded if one of these 3 teams was not representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. And then with the AFC, it's the Chiefs. The AFC is so muddied and so muddled. The only clarity I have with the AFC is that I know in the AFC the Chiefs can make and win a Super Bowl. I can't necessarily say that this morning with every other AFC team. So let's move on to the business class.
Fantastic.
So here's the rest of the AFC, right? The Bills, the Jags, the Dolphins, all teams that absolutely, if you told me they were playing in a championship game, AFC championship game, I'd say great. But playing in the Super Bowl, as of this morning, I would need to know a lot more things. I would need to know, do they have home field advantage? Where is that AFC championship game being played? What else went? Who are, there's so many other question marks I would have to know to feel even remotely comfortable dealing with that. So capable, not saying they can't get to first class, but they got to start fixing some things or proving some other things wrong. And then finally, with the economy class, the Ravens and the Bengals. So the Ravens and the Bengals are, to me, teams that right now don't feel like they'd make the championship game, but they both have the pieces to make a championship game. They both have the quarterbacks to make a championship game. They both have the pedigree with the head coach for the Ravens and for the Bengals. We've seen it the last 2 years make championship games. So don't count them out. Don't sleep on them. And what I think the Super Bowl playing really goes to show is that the AFC is the Chiefs and a bunch of question marks. And the NFC is 3 teams and no one else. I mean, there's no one else you should trust in the NFC. Yeah, there are going to be teams in the NFC to make a playoffs, but they're just those 3 teams in the NFC and no one else do I trust to make it to even a championship game, let alone a Super Bowl.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's overall very solid. I would personally probably consider putting the Dolphins in first class just because of how
Okay.
dominant at times they've looked this year, and I trust their coaching and their ability to dominate the line of scrimmage, which is extra important in the playoffs, right? So I feel like at this point I could see the Dolphins in the Super Bowl. And maybe the only other thing I would do is adding the Seattle Seahawks to economy, just because
They feel like
overall
a
it's
playoff team.
they're a quality team, and yeah, they definitely feel like a playoff team in an NFC that's not looking so hot right now. But I understand the point because you know 13 points this past week against the Bengals, and there are question marks about DK being hurt and banged up, and the defense not being as great. So yeah, there are question marks for sure with Seattle. So no big gripes with this. I think it's a really solid list.
The
For
problem was
especially for the first flight.
the problem with Miami is the flight just took off from Miami,
Yeah.
and it's only going to colder destinations, and so that were you know what I mean. Like that's tough. That's tough for Dolphins.
It absolutely is. All right. Well, I love it. And we will have this posted, of course, later on this week for all of you on social media. You can get a look at that Super Bowl plane in its entirety, but really like that iteration and glad we got this kicked off. So very much looking forward to it. This will be the last episode with me for a couple weeks. I'm getting married and then going on my honeymoon. So I will be taking a plane of my own, not first class, however, and not even business class. So we'll be very much looking like maybe a scrappy playoff team for this
Yeah,
honeymoon
you guys will be
trip, but
Seattle
that's about it.
Seahawks.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, Mark might be gracing the airwaves with some great takes and analysis the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. And we appreciate, as always, your support, liking and subscribing wherever you find this podcast and or video portion. Thank you so much for joining. This has been the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan Week 6 recap. We'll see you here next time.